Welcome everyone to Wrestling Raw!
You're listening to Wrestling Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Monday Night Raw was uncut, uncooked, and uncensored. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Hello.
Joe Giammatteo.
That's right, son of Rob Bartlett. This is Joe.
I am Jason Bartlett, no relation to Rob Bartlett. And we're going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time when we get to our usual format. In the meantime, we're doing a series right now that we're calling Raw So Far. This is going back and examining the past Raw episodes that we've already watched and are not going to go back and watch again. This time, in this episode, we're kicking off 1994. In our first 3 episodes of our podcast here, we did all of 1993. So if you haven't listened to that stuff yet, go back and check it out. I personally would like to dedicate this episode of Wrestling Raw to a little boy we know by the name of Corey Salzano. He has a lifelong illness that he's struggling with, and thoughts and prayers go out to him. So, gentlemen, January 1994, what do you think? You ready?
It's a new year.
Fresh new year, yeah.
Oh, yes!
So let's get right into it, man. Raw 46, airing on January 3rd. As far as matches go, there's not a whole lot happening. This was the theme in 93. Things are a little sparse occasionally here, but there is a significant uptick in 1994 that we'll get to as we get to it. But match-wise, maybe the most notable thing going on here is Bam Bam Bigelow and Bastion Booger as a tag team. We're fans of Bastion Booger around here. The more impressive thing going on in this Raw is one of the promos. We get another promo of The Undertaker and Paul Bearer in the workshop working on the casket. For those of you that didn't keep up with 1993, this just started in the end of 93. There's going to be a casket match between Yokozuna and The Undertaker. And these are the vignettes that are leading us up to it. Paired with this, we have a clip of Jim Cornette claiming that Paul Bearer slipped the casket match language into the contract after it was already signed. This is something that we all enjoy here, so let's talk about it a little bit. Ryan, why don't you kick us off on this one?
You know, we already talked about it in 93, how it was one of my favorite things. So in 94, it's no surprise that I still love all of these Paul Bearer Undertaker vignettes. Still building the casket leading up to this match with Yokozuna. All of these videos are just golden. I love them.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of these episodes here, what did we say? It started in December. December is when...
Yeah, I think it was the 27th.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, every Raw in December 93 and January 94 is definitely worth watching just to see these vignettes again with the workshop. And if I don't really remember a whole lot of... Like, I remember a lot of these Undertaker casket matches, but I don't remember a lot of them showing the workshop this much. So it's great to go back and watch them again because they're still great. They're still just as great now as they were when I was 10 years old watching them.
Yeah.
And Jim Cornette throwing that in there was great. I kind of wonder if, like, there's some speculation on why The Undertaker had to go away for a few months. I kind of wonder when they knew that, like if they knew that before this feud even began, but it'd be interesting to find out why that started.
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned this in our earlier episodes for 1993, I think this is a great example of the levels of storytelling that we start to get into at this time in the WWF. These vignettes, I mean, they're not in some obviously backstage locker room area that has been made up to look like a set, you know, with like drop cloths in the background or something. These are out at some weird, you know, shack out in the middle of Death Valley, I'm assuming. It's fantastic storytelling. It really sucks you in. And like you guys said, I loved it as a kid. I still love it now. It's great to watch.
Speaking of the the storytelling in this episode, we didn't really touch on the match too much of the Bam Bam Bigelow Bastion Booger, but in this too, they're setting up this longer story of Bastion Booger trying to win over Luna, Bam Bigelow's woman. So that starts in this tag team match where they're together, where he starts having the eyes for Luna.
And I always thought it was funny, like how he tried to woo her, like making these weird, like kissy faces at her and waggling his eyebrows, and very, very cartoonish, but very funny too.
What woman could resist the Bastion Booger?
That's true.
His tits were bigger than hers.
Well, for now anyway.
Yeah. We'll get to the oddities in a few years. But yeah, that's a good call on that one, because it's always nice to see Bam Bam involved in a storyline, because usually he's just a bruiser that shows up to either beat somebody down or get beaten down. Like I said before, we love Bastion Booger, so that's good stuff.
Bam Bam, for any Star Trek fans out there, kind of reminds me of Worf. He's the big baddie who everyone knows he's tough, but they like to use him for someone else that they want to get over to show how tough they are.
Yeah.
They beat Bam Bam.
Yeah, good call on that one. That's an excellent comparison. So further on in this episode of Raw, we get an interview with Lex Luger, and Lex talking about how he wants to be in the Royal Rumble. This is going to cause a little bit of trouble later on, so just keep that in mind. The other thing that we get here is a Sparky Plug promo. Hi, everybody. I'm Sparky Plug.
He's a NASCAR driver, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, Bob Holly with this crazy brunette mullet thing going on that kind of like highlights his male pattern baldness, but somehow it stays so fluffy coming out of that racing helmet.
Yeah, Bob Holly did some good things later on. It's
yeah.
This is just really bad, this Sparky Plug stuff.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about how terrible it was until I had to watch it again.
And it's a shame, because he is really good. Like, his ring work is tight. He's great to watch in the ring, but Jesus, the gimmick sucks.
Well, thankfully they fixed it later, I guess.
Yeah, so also here in Raw 46, we have kind of an interesting... I don't know about you guys, but I enjoyed it a little bit. We had Johnny Polo co-hosting at the announce table, and for those of you out there that don't know, Johnny Polo was the manager of Adam Bomb. Now he's the manager of the Quebecers, and in the future, he would go on to be Raven in ECW. But here, it was good to hear him talking, because he always was pretty darn good at talking.
Yeah, and he did a pretty decent job as co-host. I didn't mind him at all.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, I thought it was good. And I think Ryan mentioned it before, they have this revolving door of co-hosts at this time, and it's mostly bad for the most part. And Johnny Polo was actually pretty decent.
Goes to show why he was a manager for so many talents. Although I was always kind of curious as to why they didn't let him wrestle more. He did wrestle in 2 or 3 matches, but...
Yeah, he beat Marty Jannetty.
Yeah. I mean, he seemed fine. He didn't seem overly sloppy. I mean, he kind of looked a little green maybe, but I don't know. I don't see why they didn't transition him more quickly and more heavily into an in-ring talent. Then again, I didn't understand the appeal of Lex Luger either, though, so... Let's move it along here to Raw 47, airing January 10th. And we have a weird setup here. The first match of the night is a tag team match. The 1-2-3 Kid and Marty Jannetty defeat the Quebecers to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. Ryan, did you have any thoughts on that real quick?
It's notable because they win the tag team belts for a little bit of time, and off camera they lose it, right? So it's worth mentioning because it switches over the belts, and we have the 1-2-3 Kid and Marty Jannetty, who, they're kind of similar type high flyers. They go against the Quebecers. It's a somewhat entertaining match, but it was shocking that they win the belts here.
Yeah, they do correct that later on in this same Raw, though. So
yeah.
It's literally less than, I didn't see when exactly the house show was, but it's literally less than a week between winning and losing again. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because we need to mention that the second match of the night was Ludvig Borga defeating Brad Anderson. I've kind of become a fan of Ludvig Borga. I have to admit, he was just kind of ridiculous in a very special way. And the more that you guys have busted my balls on this one, the more that I've thought about it, the more I've realized I kind of am a fan of Ludvig Borga.
That really highlights the type of person you are.
Right. Very special person.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. The final match of the night, though, and this is what Ryan was talking about earlier, we have Bam Bam Bigelow defeating Bastion Booger in the ring, and this is the payoff for the whole Bastion trying to woo Luna, or I don't know if you'd really even call it wooing, but Ryan, you had mentioned something about Bobbitt's child.
Yeah. Well, this match is kind of hilarious. I mean, you have, I feel bad for Bam Bam because he has to go out there and put on this ridiculous show with Bastion Booger. But the whole time, you have Booger trying to go after Luna. And then, of course, Luna, at one point, they're outside the ring and Luna lures Bastion Booger over while Bam Bam gathers himself up. And at that point, I rewound it a whole bunch of times, and it's very tough to make out. But Vince says something about either Bam Bam or Luna being Lorena Bobbitt's child. And it was just bizarre. And I no matter how many times I rewound it, I couldn't really get it to fit in and to understand exactly what he was trying to mean there. But he brings up something about Lorena Bobbitt's child between those two. But after Luna lures Bastion over, Bam Bam then takes advantage of it and wins the match with the help of Luna.
So for those of you out there listening that are younger than us, the whole Lorena Bobbitt's child thing is a reference that Vince did. Vince loved topical stuff during this time, and I mean a little bit later on in Raw too. But back in the day when this was going on, there was a national news story involving Lorena and John Bobbitt. John Bobbitt was, if I remember correctly, I'm not looking this up, by the way. This is just going off of memory because this is seared into my brain from back when this was going on. It was terrifying being a young male during this time. I want to say the story goes that John was cheating on Lorena. Lorena found out, and then one night while he was sleeping, she cut his dick off and then drove away with it. And then as she was driving away, she threw the dick out a window and slapped it off a stop sign. I distinctly remember that. It went on to be a big thing, national media attention. I'm not sure if he got his dick back or not.
They did. They sewed it back on, and he claimed, though, it was not the whole thing. It was just the first 7 inches, is what he said. Something like that. Some claim to that effect.
Oh my God. Well, anyway, that's some background for the whole Bobbitt's child fucking comment. Oh my God.
Was it Booger or Bam Bam that he said that about?
It's very tough to understand who exactly he was talking about. That's why I rewound it so many times, but I still couldn't quite make heads or tails of it.
This is almost like a more ridiculous version of George the Animal Steel going after Miss Elizabeth.
Yes.
Back in except instead of a beautiful princess-like woman like Elizabeth, this is a vile creature, Luna Vachon.
From the future.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to the promos and interviews of this episode of Raw. And this is something that I liked because this was part of that storytelling we were talking about earlier. We get clips from superstars, and this is going to show us Paul Bearer appearing on the big screen after one of Yokozuna's matches. And he appears up on the big screen that is at the entrance ramp, where the wrestlers come down from. And up there with him in the background, there's the Undertaker still building the casket. And Yoko is very much terrified. He's very visibly terrified. He's kind of doing that like weird shuffling foot thing in the ring where he's like looking all around him to see where the Undertaker is and where he might be coming from. I thought it was a good little chunk of storytelling. Joe, what'd you think about Yoko doing this terrified jitterbug in the ring there?
Yeah, jitterbug. That's a good word for it. I loved it. I thought this was Yoko's best work. I think I've mentioned that before. I think this Undertaker Yoko stuff. I mean, it's good. It's good stuff. I wonder if they planned on doing this. I think Bruce Pritchard said that Undertaker was nursing a back injury, and that's why they wanted to go with this angle. But yeah, then I read on Meltzer's newsletters that him and his wife, or his girlfriend at the time, had their first child, and he wanted to take some time off. I don't know. Either way, like, I thought this was great, and you could sort of tell, with Yokozuna before. What do we have? A feud with Luger, and like a small one with Bret Hart, the stupid one with Hulk Hogan. This was like, the fans were definitely more into this than any of the other feuds that Yoko had at that time.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent example of The Undertaker being able to put over just about anyone. Because Yoko, like you just mentioned, regardless that they put the belt on him, the fans just don't care about him. Any match that he's been in, because he's terrible in the ring, and he'll continue to be terrible in the ring. But in this example right here, it was great. He played the terrified, scared Yokozuna perfectly. And like you said, the fans were getting into it now. They really believed it. And me as a kid, I loved it. I remember this is one of the highlights from being a kid, was the casket matches.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. It's kind of obvious now looking back at it, but up until this point, Yokozuna had been this immovable object, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty sure they used that exact phrasing once or twice, but everybody was intimidated by him, kind of, but he was just this monomyth that nobody could take on or take down. And to get this little bit of emotion out of him going into this was, like I said, just great storytelling. It really, really added to the whole thing. But we're going to keep it moving along here. And this is getting back to what I mentioned earlier with the whole 1-2-3 Kid, Marty Jannetty defeating the Quebecers to win the WWF Tag Championship thing. So this particular episode of Raw ends with a promo from the Quebecers and Johnny Polo stating that there was a rematch clause in their contract for the WWF tag team belts, and that rematch had been held at a house show. Okay, this is going to explain why the Quebecers are the tag team champs at the upcoming Royal Rumble. Because I had to go back and look into this stuff whenever we were watching this, because I was confused. I had remembered the 1-2-3 Kid and Marty Jannetty beating the Quebecers, because I distinctly remember being very excited about that, feeling that maybe we would get a little less Quebecers happening. Not to mention I enjoy a 1-2-3 Kid match. I was looking forward to less Jannetty. Quebecers. Yeah, well. Thank God nobody has a broken neck here.
That's right. The Quebecers all made it out with all limbs intact.
Yeah. But like I said, I was confused whenever we got to, because I guess I must not have been paying attention for this particular promo at the time, but we got to Royal Rumble and I was like, well, hold on a second. I thought the 1-2-3 Kid and Marty Jannetty were the tag champs. Why the fuck are the Quebecers defending the belts? This is why. So just wanted to make that clear to everybody. This is one of those weird flip-flop of the belt things that they did using house shows. We don't really see them all that often, but it's just enough to cause a little bit of confusion for those of you out there watching, so just be aware of it. The biggest notable happening, I think, though, for this, in kind of like a broader sense, this is the 1-year anniversary of Raw. January 10th, it was January 11th the year before. Yeah, 1 year of Raw. Just real briefly, I'm going to ask you guys, how far do you think Raw came in 1 year? Joe, do you want to start that one out for us?
We're still getting a lot of jobber matches. To me, it hasn't really become, well, aside from Rob Bartlett, your father, no longer being there, I don't think it really improved that much. I think it's stayed pretty steady, in my opinion.
I would think there were definite points of improvement. Now, we didn't completely reinvent the show yet, but at this point, the one main thing is they're actually starting to move around at this point. So at the beginning, it was every show looked like there were about 12 people in the audience. And at this point, they're starting to fill up some good sized audiences. So that's a a distinct difference. But one shame, yes, we got rid of Rob Bartlett, but we're in this transition period where by the end of this year, we'll shore it up, but they're not sure who they're going to use as the second commentator to Vince. And from week to week, we can go from great commentary to terrible commentary, depending on who they decide to throw in there.
Yeah.
So they haven't quite found their footing yet, but there's a couple things they've improved right now.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with both of you on that one. It's been kind of a slog. I think that the entire first year, it definitely had its high points, but you can almost feel the growing pains going on with this stuff. They're getting used to having a weekly prime time show and just, trying to adjust to that whole kind of new thing that's going on for them.
One thing to point out, though, just to kind of highlight what Raw has improved over, just to quickly look over what our next Raw is going to be. And you could see that there's actually stars now starting to show up in Raw. So the next one we have Owen and Bret Hart, Tatanka, Diesel, Randy Savage, IRS. So they're starting to fill it with a little bit more content now.
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing I remember from Raw, watching it as a kid and stuff, is it sort of became that show where there's no jobber matches, because I used to watch Superstars on Saturdays, and I used to watch Raw on Mondays, and I remember Raw being the show that had the headline matches and no jobbers, where Superstars you would see different replays of Raw stuff, or you would see just enhancement talent matches, basically.
Yeah, lots of jobber matches.
So Raw, it's interesting to watch starting in 93 here, where we slowly watch it develop into that.
Yeah, good call on all of that. You're both absolutely right. We're going to move it to Raw 48, airing January 17th now. And like Ryan had mentioned, we've got more stars on this. We've got, in our 4 matches, we've got Owen Hart with Bret Hart at ringside. Second match is Tatanka. Third match is Diesel. And then our fourth match is Randy Savage and IRS in the main event there. So yeah, getting a little more bang for our buck from the matches here. But even so, they aren't mind-blowing matches. Like, for example, this Owen Hart defeating a jobber by the name of Terry Austin. He's got Bret Hart at ringside with him. It's more for pushing along the whole Hart Brothers storyline than for any desire for a good match, And it was a good match, don't get me wrong. Anything with Owen Hart or Bret Hart, for that matter, even though he wasn't wrestling, but any Hart match is a good match for the most part. But it was more about moving the storyline along than highlighting skills with this stuff at this point, I think. But again, like so many of the Raws before, the real gems are found in the promos and interviews. Something that I was very pleased with in the end of 93 and then getting a little more of here in 94 is highlights of the WWF Women's Championship, getting a little more airtime here, a little more attention paid to some of that stuff. And one of the promos that we have is video recaps of Alundra Blaze victories. And I'm not as big of a fan of Alundra Blaze as I am of Bull Nakano, but it's still good to see that represented here.
One thing I was just thinking about the other day is, why Raw, especially when they were trying to really reach for matches out here, they didn't really want, a lot of the big names. Why didn't they put Alundra Blaze on Raw a little bit more? We kind of just saw her at pay-per-views and hardly ever at Raw.
That's a great question, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but my gut goes straight to there weren't quality opponents for her.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before too, like when we saw her debut, that they were actually trying to get. She was working in Japan at one point before this, and they were trying to get women wrestlers from Japan into WWF for her to have some sort of matches, because there just wasn't enough competition.
They couldn't set up some type of feud with Luna.
Well, you're not wrong in that, because Luna was a trained wrestler. I mean, she knew how to work and take bumps. There's no reason why she couldn't have
That's why I'm bringing her up. I mean, Luna was in there the whole time, but she just kind of is the side piece for Bam Bam for most of this year and last.
Side piece.
Well, yeah, but they have this great storyline going on with Bastion Booger right now. They don't want to mess that up.
That's true. Can't taint that.
No, and it is kind of fucked up though, because whenever things become more focused on the women's wrestling, Luna, I think, maybe has one match that we'll probably get to here eventually, but the bigger role that she plays is as a manager for Bull Nakano briefly. Like, she still doesn't even get in the damn ring. And I'm not sure what the story is behind that, but I mean, I don't know.
I mean, maybe it was her choice.
It's almost like another Diesel situation, if you look at it, because it's like, let's just get this guy in here, or like, let's just get this woman in here and see where it goes. You know, just want to get her here because obviously she's an attraction.
Yeah. And, that makes me think then that because for the longest time we had Luna, but no Alundra, because Alundra didn't come in. Well, I mean, she was there and doing things, but they didn't highlight her or really use her all that much. It makes me wonder if maybe they learned a little more about Luna over the course of that time before they started revving up the women's wrestling, that made them decide, well, maybe we don't want to use her in the ring. Maybe we just want to leave her at ringside.
But it seems like even if she wasn't on Raw wrestling, they could have been doing something, doing some type of segments with her. I know last year they did that one short segment with Jerry the King Lawler in the King's Court, but that's really it. She never shows up on Raw. She's never doing interviews. It's just confusing to me. Yeah,
just a really weird situation all around. Regardless, I mean, it is good to see some legit women's wrestling here, even if it's in the form of video recaps. It's nice to be reminded that it was going on. Moving along to our next interview. We've got Vince interviewing Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji in the ring. And this is more of that great storytelling. The lights go out and Paul Bearer wheels out the casket. And it's just, the crowd goes fucking nuts for this. Mr. Fuji orders Yoko to squash it. And before he can do that, the Undertaker pops out like a fucking manic Jack in the Box. The crowd goes apeshit. Yoko is terrified. And again, loved it as a kid, loved it now. Joe, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. The squash, Mr. Fuji ordering him to squash it is just the best. I love
squash it. It's fantastic. Like you said, just as a child, I loved it then. At 37 now, when he popped out, I was just as excited. I mean, it was great to watch. even though I knew it was coming, right?
Yeah. Even like before, when it actually happened in 1994, it's like, all right,
oh yeah, there's no way the Undertaker's not in that casket.
It's still great. And then even watching it now, it's great.
I felt like a simpleton because I was on the edge of the couch here. Like I knew, like you say, I knew it was coming, and he pops out, and I'm basically just leaping up out of my seat and clapping and, acting like a damn moron.
Once again, Yoko's best work.
It's real to me, damn it.
Oh my God. All right. So our second interview of the night is Vince doing a short interview with Bret and Owen Hart about their upcoming WWF Tag Team Title Challenge, challenging the title holders, I should say. Bret and Owen are the challengers at the Royal Rumble. And this is the first time they've been reunited in a speaking setting on Raw. We've seen Bret at ringside for Owen's match before, but this is the first time that they're together in a non-wrestling, kind of situation and both talking. Ryan, what's that you smell? You smell the rivalry.
I mean, this goes back to the storytelling we've said before, and we have two of the greats right now going at it, and they're on screen here, and they're talking up the match that they're going to have together. But just the extra second glances they give each other after a certain term, or you know it's coming. They're not going to let bygones be bygones, and there's going to be a fight brewing.
Yeah, these stories, a storyline like this that they just draw out for a long time that works. Just these kind of storylines just get me fully torqued. I love it. They took their time with it. It was great. It went on for months. It started in a Survivor Series, November 93, and we know what happens eventually, but it's great to see a good storyline go on for 6 months or so, because it's not something that you would see. You definitely don't see it now, and you didn't really see it that often then either.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you on this one. I don't know if it was because I knew what was going on with it, but like the tension was just palpable. It's like you were saying, Ryan, it's the little side glances. It's the pacing of the conversation, and just, I don't know. This was a great interview. Props to Bret and Owen Hart both for doing this, because I think this is a great example of the way that these guys are performers as much as they are athletes. To be able to create that tension, you look at the two of them and you think, well, a couple of meatheads. I'm sure that they are probably really good at throwing people around in the ring and jumping around and whatever. But then you watch something like this, and I mean, they're great examples of entertainers in this, because all they were doing was just talking, and it advanced the storyline so much and made me feel things so much just from some talking.
Like I said before, it goes back to being like Shakespeare. It's like a play. Just because of the way they're holding their face and their reaction to way the brother said something, you know where it's going without them saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just such a believable storyline.
Mm-hmm.
It's two brothers that are just competitive, and just it's very believable. Just like the Undertaker popping out of a casket.
Completely believable. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I know that both of you guys are going to be excited for this particular point, but Raw 48, January 17th, the Raw that we have just been discussing, we can't exit this Raw without mentioning that Crush has been co-hosting the whole time, brother. We've had Crush on mic with Vince.
Welcome to Monday Night Raw, brother.
God, what a fucking chowderhead. All right, we'll leave it at that. We're not very big fans of Crush. And it, just to kind of sum it up, he was just as horrible at ringside as one would expect. Maybe we're biased, I don't know, but it is what it is.
I just wanted to point out, this is another clear example. This is the go home show, right? Right before the pay-per-view. So we got to make sure no one's fighting anyone but jobbers. So nice quick matches. We put Crush on the mic for some god-awful reason. They don't care right now because pay-per-view is coming up.
Yeah, common theme. It's a very clear pattern. Once you know what to look for, you can set your fucking watch by it practically. And like you say, this is leading us into Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble 1994 aired January 22nd. Like we mentioned before, and this is something that I want to briefly just highlight. The Quebecers were the tag team champs for this, and they received the challengers of Bret and Owen Hart. Quebecers won, and I just want to point out that this is a reason for me to dislike the Quebecers even more, because goddamn, this could have been a great match if it was anybody but the fucking Quebecers. If the 1-2-3 Kid and Marty Jannetty had held on to the belts, just imagine how great of a fucking tag team match this would have been. 1-2-3 Kid, Marty Jannetty versus Bret and Owen Hart. That would have been amazing.
Not to look ahead too far, but of course the match between Bret Hart and 1-2-3 Kid that's coming up, I mean, just kind of really shows what it could have been.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me is I know this is obviously the more build up for Bret and Owen.
Right.
But like Quebecers versus Bret and Owen Hart, you know who's going to win that match. If this was real life, Bret and Owen Hart would destroy the Quebecers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just stupid. And back to the 1-2-3 Kid Marty Jannetty thing. I don't understand why they did that. I just don't get it. I guess maybe Marty Jannetty got fired again for like the 20th time. I don't know.
To me, the only I could only assume it was because they wanted to put two high flyers together. Like they wanted this team of just.
Well, no, I mean with like the quick title change. I guess.
Oh, you mean why they took the titles off them so quick?
Why they put them on if they were gonna take them off that quick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess they were trying to. I know they did a lot of that at house shows at this time because they were trying to get the attendance up at those. Where it's like, hey, anything can happen on these house shows, but. I don't get it. You throw this new tag team together, you put the belt on them for what, like 3 days?
And you don't even take it off them so anyone could see. You do it at a house show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be like a backseat fan here or anything, but I just think it would have been, and we mentioned this so many times especially in 1993, and it's going to continue into 1994 here. Just the overall sorry state of the tag team scene in the WWF. That's something that could have given us. I mean, I know they had somewhere they were going with Bret and Owen. Like the whole Bret and Owen as a tag team wasn't the main focus for that. It was a sideline to get us to where we were going to eventually wind up with the rivalry. And that's fine. I totally get that. But we've mentioned before that Marty Jannetty is a tag team guy. He fucking sucks on his own for the most part. The 1-2-3 Kid was great in the ring in singles, and he did just as well in tag teams. I mean, he had that one tag team match with Razor Ramon as his partner. He was great in this match with Marty Jannetty. And even if they had to go back and break them up again, like a little bit after, figure out some kind of, I don't know, like just give me the 1-2-3 Kid and Marty Jannetty as the tag team placeholders until the Head Shrinkers. You know what I mean?
Why is it the Quebecers?
Yes. Why do we have to keep on saddling ourselves with these fucking idiots, the Quebecers?
Because there's a fine line between being a good heel and getting the crowd to hate you and the crowd just legitimately hating you. And that's what it was with the Quebecers. It wasn't this, oh, ha, 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 we hate you, you're the heel. It's, we think you suck, we hate you.
Kind of like everybody that listens to this podcast. Yeah, they had heat, but it wasn't good heat.
Yeah, it wasn't the right type of heat.
Yeah.
But, it just, even the music that they came out to, that stupid fucking, we're the Mounties, like,
well, that was the only thing that was like somewhat funny.
Well, it was Jacques' music as a singles guy before this.
It doesn't fit them as a team. I mean, they're dressed as Mounties, but what the fuck does one have to do with the other? They tie themselves so hard to the whole Quebecer gimmick. Early on, they do a lot of talking in French, and just the whole thing is just a mishmash. And we've
spent enough time on the Quebecers.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But it pisses me off because the tag team scene sucked, and 1-2-3 Kid Marty Jannetty versus Bret and Owen Hart would have just been an amazing fucking match. I'm pissed that we didn't have that.
Yep.
Anyway, moving along. We get a couple, it's a pay-per-view. There are belt matches here. Razor Ramon defeats IRS to retain the Intercontinental belt. And in the WWF Championship casket match, Yokozuna defeats The Undertaker to retain the WWF Championship title. Joe, get us started talking about this one.
Yoko and 10 other
at least 10 other people,
random heels. Yeah, this is like old school keeping kayfabe alive type of thing that they went with here. I don't know. I liked what happened after the match. Having everybody come out like that, I don't know. I guess it's a way to make The Undertaker look unstoppable.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what they were going for. But obviously the match itself was horrible. I mean, there wasn't much of a match. So it's like, you had all this build up that was so great, and then the match is just kind of shitty. And then the theatrics after was good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's no surprise because it involves Yokozuna that everything leading up to it was better. We've talked about at length how much we love these Undertaker building the casket vignettes, and it's a shame that it ends with such kind of a shitty match with Yokozuna, but it's not a surprise. Like Joe just mentioned, they have to bring in the whole backstage heels just to make sure Yokozuna could win. And it's a way to make it seem like Undertaker, that's the only way to beat him. Yokozuna can only defeat him in a casket match so he can go away and either tend to his new kid or tend to his back, or both, is that we need 20 people to come out to hold him down to finally bury him. But the theatrics at the end, fantastic. I mean, the whole ascending to the ceiling as he resurrects out of the little promo that he cuts inside the casket, that I will not rest in peace. It's all great. It's a shame that couldn't transfer into the ring.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. And I get what you're both saying about to put over Yokozuna more, I take that back. To put over Undertaker more as somebody that literally needs a baker's dozen guys to come out and put him down. But going back and watching this now, maybe it's just because I'm so cynical now, the hindsight, maybe it's my general dislike of Yokozuna. I watched this, and when we got to that ending, what I thought was that between the shitty match and then that ending, that was the only way they could get Yokozuna's fat, sweaty ass to last that long in the ring.
Probably. And
keep it somewhat entertaining, because, I mean, the bastard breaks a sweat walking 3 feet. And he kept on getting bigger. He's bigger now, not just because, the guys at ringside were talking up his weight with increases. I mean, he went from 500 pounds to 600 pounds over the course of 1993.
That's eating 20 pounds of rice.
That was a legitimate weight gain that he had.
Yeah. Yeah. And as such, I mean, he's getting shittier and sloppier in the ring. And the promos were great. The after match thing with the ascension to the sky and will not rest in peace, that was all great. But the match and the ending of the match, to me, were just covering for Yokozuna's crappiness. Mm-hmm. Like that aspect of it outweighed everything else, and that's what I walked away with from this.
Sadly, we leave the Royal Rumble with Yokozuna still the heavyweight champion.
Yes,
right. And watching it again, I remember watching this when it actually happened.
Oh yeah,
and thought the whole thing was great. Watching it again, it's just like you really, really notice, okay, the match starts, let's just get to the thing at the end. Because everything in between is just, it's awful. The match itself was just stupid. And you have these guys, I think, like, I know Jeff Jarrett was one of them. Diesel.
Bam Bam was in there.
It's just like, like random guys that haven't even feuded with The Undertaker. I could understand if they maybe just had like a couple guys that maybe feuded with The Undertaker, or if you're going to maybe build, I mean, whatever they're doing is going to be to continue the feud with Yokozuna. But I don't know. I just didn't get the whole have 12 guys come out.
It was legitimately any heel in the background came out.
Yeah, I that's a great point, and I completely agree with it. Like, one of the things that I was thinking watching that ending was, how do these guys that come out, how are they benefiting from keeping Yokozuna the champion? And I couldn't answer that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the one broken thing in the story. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk too bad about it, because overall I did like the whole thing.
Yeah. It's one of the most memorable things from my childhood. I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I will remember it always.
Yeah. And this is clearly you can tell this is kind of the beginning of the end of Yokozuna, because like you said, Bartlett, he just can't, this guy can't even have a match anymore at this point.
Yeah, and the end can't come soon enough. Speaking of the end can't come soon enough, we get to our main event at Royal Rumble, and it is the Rumble. Now, remember last year, because this is going to be important too. Last year, Royal Rumble 93 was the first Royal Rumble to have the stipulation that the winner of the Rumble challenges the reigning champion in the main event at WrestleMania. Okay, so this touches back to one of the Raws leading up to the Royal Rumble and the whole talk and debate of whether or not Lex Luger could be in the Rumble. Because we'll remember back at SummerSlam, Jim Cornette had slipped in to the SummerSlam 93 contract of Yokozuna versus Lex Luger, that Lex Luger was not able to rematch Yoko for the belt. Okay? Keep that in mind. Whenever we say then that Bret Hart and Lex Luger co-win the Royal Rumble. They co-win the Royal Rumble. I don't know what to think of this.
It's more just Vince not being sure of who he wants to put the belt on, because they did the whole stupid thing with Jack Tunney coming out, and it's like, okay, everybody cheer for Bret. Okay, now cheer for Lex. It's like, okay, let's see who the fans like more. Yeah. When you should know that by now.
What a blatant whoring out of your talent.
And not to mention a terrible, terrible ending to a Royal Rumble. I mean, you're going to have two people win that's supposed to be the whole point of a Royal Rumble. You have one winner.
Yeah. Really just disappointing. Although if there's anything to be said for it, I do have to credit both Bret Hart and Lex Luger for the simultaneous syncing up of their feet hitting the ground, because in the replays
they did a good job with it.
They did do a great job of that. It really was, I don't remember being able to clearly tell.
They made sure to keep on showing us that angle that was kind of up and back.
Yeah.
Like they didn't show us that angle from the other side, but right. I mean, that's the advantage you have, of filming.
But all in all, the Rumble was, the pay-per-view was just kind of a disappointment for me personally. I felt the lead up to this was better than the matches themselves. There was some interesting notes on this Royal Rumble, though. Ludvig Borga. Ludvig Borga was scheduled to be Tatanka's opponent earlier in the night. And our first match of the Royal Rumble was Tatanka, or the first match of the evening, not of the Rumble itself, excuse me. Tatanka had defeated Bam Bam Bigelow. Ludvig Borga had been scheduled to be Tatanka's opponent in that match and then go on to compete in the Rumble. But unfortunately, sweet Ludvig had a legit injury that prevented him from wrestling tonight. And Ludvig was never seen on WWF television again.
Gee, I wonder why. Yeah, this was pretty great that that Ludvig gets injured and then we never see him again, because as I've mentioned, and I believe many, many others have mentioned, he's one of the worst wrestlers of all time. One of our Wrestling Raw favorite, Jason Bartlett, he can't get enough of Ludvig.
We should have a 10-bell salute for Jason's loss.
We should.
Sorry about your loss.
You should get more like a 2-bell salute.
Yeah.
Did you know what USA stands for? You stink a lot.
Yeah, Ludvig stinks a lot, and so do you for liking him.
Well, you can both go fuck yourselves. Moving along.
Well, apparently he had I guess he broke his ankle really very badly.
Yeah.
And that's why he's done.
No, he's done because he's a terrible wrestler. That's why he never came back. The ankle injury just sped it along.
And that's why clearly he didn't say it, about a minute ago, but that's why Jason Bartlett hated the Royal Rumble 94s because Ludvig Borga's unable to perform.
Yeah, crushing. It was crushing. So I don't know how I'm ever going to recover from it. This is going to taint my view of wrestling from 1993 or 1994 on into the future. But we can't let that stop us. We've got 12 subscribers that need to hear what we have to say. So we got to move it along. Other notables, Thurman Sparky Plug makes his first appearance as a Rumble participant to replace the 1-2-3 Kid who was out due to injury. So we've had promos of my friends call me Sparky up until now, but we hadn't seen him in action, and his place in the Rumble was his first foray into the ring. Joe, do you have any quick comments on that?
Real quick, yeah. I don't know about you guys, but at this point, I wish we could not ever talk about Sparky Plug ever again.
Well, tough shit on that one. If we can't talk about Ludvig Borga, we're going to talk about fucking Sparky Plug. God damn it.
It's a shame because, 1, 2, 3, the crowd was loving him at this point. So it's kind of a heartbreaker for him that he couldn't make it to the big Royal Rumble and actually, put out a match in there, because he was starting to become, the crowd loved him and he was starting to become a big name.
Yeah. In this case, I totally agree. But at the same time, I'm glad that he, well, maybe not him, but whoever made the decision to take him out of the Royal Rumble did so, because I wouldn't want us to be deprived of his great matches if he forced through it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm very happy, as much as it sucked not seeing him, I'm very happy that he took care of himself to be able to come back and wrestle again. So,
not to mention the style of wrestling he does, he has to be kind of 100%.
Oh yeah.
to be able to just fling yourself up to the top rope and jump, and you need to be 100% for that, and he's not going to satisfy the fans if he's not.
Yeah. This is a teensy bit of an aside, but I always looked at the 1, 2, 3 Kid in especially now in hindsight as kind of like the proto RVD. He really kind of is like a smaller, skinnier version of Rob Van Dam, and I personally think Rob Van Dam was better, but
RVD worked so stiff, though. Like, he wasn't as good of a wrestler as 1, 2, 3
yeah,
Kid.
I'll give you that.
In my
I'd
opinion.
agree with that.
We won't dwell on it, but I just wanted to point out the kind of the similarity in style. They're both very, very, very unique.
Well, yeah, they're both martial arts experts like Quang.
Yeah. Oh my God. Quang. Anyway, we'll move it along here. We already mentioned about the Undertaker's ascension to the heavens after his crazy video montage, and that was pretty good stuff. But the biggest thing, storyline-wise, I think, to come out of the Royal Rumble is we have an official reigniting of the brother versus brother feud and the beginning of what would become the King of Hearts storyline for Owen Hart. So at the end of their match, now remember, the Quebecers are defeating Owen Hart and Bret Hart in the Tag Team Championship match. And at the end of that match, after the loss, Owen Hart kicks out Bret Hart's knee and just is savage about it and stands in the ring and, yelling down at him and berating him, and everybody goes batshit. It was a great way to get a payoff for that tension that we talked about before, and also to really reignite that rivalry that'll give us some good matches in the future.
Yeah, and this is where I think Owen he kind of flubbed up one of his lines on the promo after. Says, I kicked his leg out from his leg.
Yes, that's exactly right. This was the spittle, wasn't it, Joe?
No, this is not the spittle,
okay.
But this is the promo, the interview after this match. Is when he said he messed up his line somewhere, and that's what he said. He's like, I kicked his leg out from his leg.
That whole thing was just kind of weird. I shouldn't say weird, but I don't know. It's almost like he was still in the zone for that and couldn't think of the right things to say. Like he was still so jazzed up from the match that he was having a hard time concentrating on what to say into the microphone, Yeah,
jazzed up or just exhausted. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
How when you're out of breath, you can't really. Your thoughts don't come to you very quick.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, it was, of everything that we talked about with Royal Rumble 94, I feel that that's probably the most notable is the kickoff of the feud here. Or I should say the re-kickoff of the feud. But we're not done with January yet. We still got one more Raw to squeeze in here. Raw 49.
Two more.
Shit, you're right. There's a lot of Raw happening.
These are some weak Raws right here coming up.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed is the Royal Rumble happened on January 22nd, which is a rare Saturday night pay-per-view because the Raw is January 24th. So A little interesting there.
That is weird. Kind of makes you wonder what was going on.
Probably a dog show. Might have been a dog show on pay-per-view that Sunday night.
I used to watch the dog show with my mother.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Well, what the fuck else was I going to watch? There wasn't any wrestling on.
That's true.
Anyway.
Old tapes of Ludvig Borga matches, maybe.
Keeping him in the spank bank.
Sit there and weep. All right, so after the Royal Rumble, Raw 49 airing January 24th. Not anything going on here. For some fucking reason, we get more Sparky Plug promos, even though he's already had his debut. You'd think that maybe after that they would kind of reformulate things and just stop with the Sparky Plug promos, but whatever. My friends call me Sparky. So the only good thing, though, to really talk about with Raw 49 is that Jim Ross co-hosts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan, how'd you feel about that?
It was just, hearing his voice, it felt right. Like it felt just right at home as a kid hearing good old JR commentator match. So I love to hear that. Sadly, it was such a pathetic Raw.
Yeah, it's really the only thing worth noting on this one.
What, you don't want to talk about John Paul or Tommy Angel or Joey Stallings or Tyron Knox?
Adam Bomb.
They had so many matches in this Raw because they probably all lasted 2 minutes.
Yeah. I had briefly thought about talking about head shrinkers defeating Men on a Mission, but I couldn't even bring myself to be excited about that.
It was a worthless match.
Yeah, really.
Sparky Plug promo, all of it.
But we'll move it along here. Now, this will be the final match of January. Raw 50 on January 31st. We do get to see Quang in there, so there's that. For promos and interviews, that's where the meat is going to be found in this one, folks. We get this convoluted fucking... Okay, so let me restart that, folks. Back at Royal Rumble, we had Bret Hart and Lex Luger co-winning the Rumble. As disturbing as that was in its own right, it led us to this, which I felt was even more just stupid. We have this coin toss. Okay, Bret Hart and Lex Luger toss a coin for the way that their challenges for the WWF Championship title will happen at WrestleMania. Try to follow me on this one because it's like a goddamn maze. So if Lex Luger wins the coin toss, he will fight Yokozuna for the belt at WrestleMania. Bret Hart will have to fight Owen Hart in a match before that match, and then the winner of that match will go to fight the winner of the Yokozuna Lex Luger match. And if Bret wins the coin toss, he will fight Yoko at WrestleMania for the belt, but then Lex Luger will have to fight Crush, brudda, earlier in the night, and then later have to go on to fight the winner of the Yokozuna Bret match. And ultimately Luger wins the coin toss.
Did you follow that?
So I had to, I couldn't, I'll be completely honest with you guys on this one. I could not follow this as it was happening. I had to look this up on the internet and get like a more detailed breakdown of these stipulations in order to come close to understanding it. Joe, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah, this wasn't very clear to the fans. So it's just, again, more of let's figure out who they like more, Lex or Bret. And it's just the Lex Luger project slowly failing.
That sounds like the name of a great progressive 80s metal band, the Lex Luger Project.
The Lex Luger Project, yeah.
Watching these over, like, I was confused where it almost felt like it was a con man who was like trying to just throw out a bunch of words and terms and just trying to confuse the fuck out of you.
Yes.
So that you had no clue as to what was actually going on. And that's what it felt like. I mean,
well, I wish I could remember the exact wording, but the way that they described the first match that had to happen, something about like an opponent of equal status.
Yeah.
And Crush. Like, how did Crush get worked into that?
Because he is of equal status to Lex Luger. Let's not quibble about that one.
Well, yes, he is. But you know what? Of how shitty this was, at least we ended up getting a great match at WrestleMania from this.
It was just very convoluted.
Yes, very much so. And then not only that, like, thankfully we got at least two great matches out of WrestleMania, because we had to watch Yokozuna perform in two matches that night. I mean, that could have been a total disaster.
It could have been. He could have died.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, for our sake, having to watch him perform. Who cares if he dies?
We could have died.
Yeah.
My God. We'll leave that as it is, because we're gonna be coming back and revisiting all of this at WrestleMania. So that's where we stand with it as of right now. Further on in this episode of Raw, we get a tribute to The Undertaker. This was a great vignette. Paul Bearer is creeping around a graveyard, saying that The Undertaker is not gone and will return. Ryan?
Just like the vignettes leading up to the casket match, these are great. Anytime you have Paul Bearer on screen, it's going to be a gift. And these are no exception. I love watching him as he's saying this. Is this the video that we actually see The Undertaker moving around in the background, but Paul Bearer doesn't see him, right?
I don't know. I didn't notice that.
Oh, no. Yeah, one of these videos, and I'm pretty sure it's the one in the graveyard, you see The Undertaker kind of move across the background. It's clearly him, but Paul Bearer doesn't mention anything, but you could see it clearly. And I'm pretty sure it's the one in the graveyard.
Are you sure? Are you sure this isn't like a Munchkin hanging himself in the back of the Wizard of Oz?
No. It's very clear. Like he walks like right behind one of the gravestones. Like it's clearly The Undertaker.
Wow. Yeah. I was so focused on Paul Bearer for all of these that, I didn't even notice.
I'm pretty sure it's the one in the graveyard, but if it's not one of these videos, he walks across the background.
All right. Well, keep your eye out for that, I guess, everybody, if you go back and rewatch this stuff.
This was good. It's just a shame that they went where they went with this whole thing, because, it's still great up to this point, even after the match.
Yeah, and it should be noted, though that where it does go only stays about half great, and that half is Paul Bearer's half of things. So consummate excellence out of Paul Bearer and Undertaker at all times. Some notable happenings here for Raw 50. We have IRS co-hosting. This is another one of those duds. I like IRS, but with as much as Vince likes to talk about, the Clintons and everything, it could have been better than it was.
IRS was not made to be in long format like this.
Yeah, agreed.
You know what IRS stands for, right? You stink a lot.
Well, we do get the debut of Kwang here in action on Raw.
Woohoo.
Well, you didn't introduce him properly. Come on. It's not just Kwang.
You mean the master of the martial arts? Kwang?
There you
That's
go.
right. That's right.
My God. The master of a fucking fork and spoon, I think. But anyway, we also have the return of Earthquake to the WWF here, which is just kind of weird and out of nowhere. I would think that Earthquake was a big enough name that he would have warranted one or two promos at least, considering what they were doing for My Friends Call Me Sparky. They could have done something for Earthquake here, but
it was interesting to see him I think, is this the first time I don't think it was the first time we saw him as a babyface, but he returned as a babyface and was pretty over with the crowd.
I loved Earthquake and the natural disasters in general when I was young.
Yeah,
I was a huge fan.
Yeah, and for those of you out there that either don't know Earthquake or are fans of Earthquake but don't necessarily know a lot about his past, it'll come up later whenever we talk about his match with Yokozuna, but Earthquake was a legit sumo wrestler and a legit badass. Won't get too deep into it here, but suffice to say, it's worth looking into. He had a great record on the sumo circuit in Japan. Yeah, Earthquake was the real deal. So just FYI, look into it if you are a fan and are so inclined. But this is going to round out January. Joe, what kind of news, what kind of hot things were going on in the wrestling world in January of 1994?
Yeah, just a few quick things. We spent a lot of time on January 94, a lot happening in that month.
Yeah.
But just a few things I want to point out. The Royal Rumble reader poll gave a 28% thumbs up, 63% thumbs down. Overall, it seems like the fans kind of agree with you, Bartlett, and didn't really enjoy it that much. And they voted the best match as the Hart Brothers versus the Quebecers.
Shoo.
Which is a little surprising. And they voted the worst match to be the Undertaker versus Yokozuna. Which, if you look at it from a match aspect, yes, I would agree with that. One of the other things that I want to point out that I read about was that Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels, we know about their legendary ladder match that they had at WrestleMania that we're going to talk about, but they were doing these ladder matches at house shows at this time, starting in January. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, me neither.
Other than that, we pretty much talked about everything else.
All right. Okay. Well, that's gonna move us along to February, and I think, guys, we're gonna be blowing through February because there are not nearly as many Raws happening. There's no pay-per-view, and there's just not a lot happening in general here. The first Raw of February 1994 was Raw 51, airing on February 7th. Match-wise, not a whole lot. We get back to, our usual routine of jobbers and stars. For promos and interviews, we get another promo of Paul Bearer in another graveyard talking about all of the different Undertaker sightings around the world. He says that we should all have faith and that the Undertaker will rise again. I loved this one. This was just as good as the last one. And we've said, that these were good and remain good. So I don't think we really need to get too deep into it. Suffice to say, we're all fans of this one. So
yeah, much more to talk about. Great.
Yeah. Vince interviews the Quebecers and Johnny Polo for some damn reason. But we do get notified that in light of the upcoming Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, Vince ends the show by giving Bastion Booger some Alpo and milk bones to eat, which he does, before Doink Dink, the Bushwhackers, and Men on a Mission come out barking and yapping. What is bigger to note, however, about this, we are all fans of this one. Are you guys ready to talk about this? Bastion Booger co-hosted.
Woo!
I would love to see the food tab on that one.
Yeah, this was something else. Him co-hosting wasn't quite on the level of that beginning of Raw where he was just covering himself in just filth and garbage, but just the whole time, the amount of shit that he's just shoving down his throat, the pizza, it was hilarious. And I feel bad for Bastion Booger having to play this character and humiliate himself like this. But man, for a fan, he laid it all out there and it was hilarious.
Yeah. Entertainment factor. This we've talked.
Yeah, he sold his soul for entertainment.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of Raws here in these episodes, but this is by far my favorite episode of Monday Night Raw, just because of Bastion Booger's co-hosting. Just the eating was one thing, but just everything. I don't know if you guys really paid attention to the stuff he was saying during this episode. And I don't remember exactly all of it.
It's been a little bit since I watched it. But.
Yeah, it's worth watching again just to hear the conversations that he was having with Vince and just how disgusted Vince sounded at everything that came out of his mouth.
Yeah.
It's just great. And then this ending is the most bizarre. This is by far the most bizarre ending to a Raw that we've watched so far. This Doink Dink, Bushwhackers, and Men on a Mission. Just randomly, what were they doing? They were barking
and yapping and just, yeah.
I guess because of, they're tying in with the dog food and the Westminster dog show. Yeah, it's surreal. It's
random and bizarre.
Yeah, it's pretty out there.
This one, yeah, February 7th, 1994 is definitely worth a rewatch just for Bastion Booger.
And a good laugh.
Yeah.
To note for a future storyline, this is the episode also where we start seeing Nikolai Volkov at ringside in the same suit every week. He's poor enough that he only owns one suit, but yet he is rich enough to buy tickets to Raw every fucking week.
And I'm going to double down on Vince just really wants to humiliate people this week. So,
yeah.
So he had Bastion Booger, and now we have the just well-respected Nikolai Volkov, and he's just making him look like a piece of trash.
Yeah, but we will get to that here in the future, so best not dwell on it too much. Next up is Raw 52, airing on February 21st. Really not much going on here. There's only two matches in this fucking Raw. Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid defeat the Quebecers by disqualification in a tag team championship match. Because it's by disqualification, the Quebecers retain the belts. Ryan, did you have something you wanted to say about this one, or?
Yeah, it's mainly worth mentioning. It's interesting you have Razor Ramon, 1-2-3 Kid. They're both huge fan favorites at this point. So, they put them up against the Quebecers, and then it's a worthless match because it's a DQ, like so many matches with the Quebecers have been. It's like, hey, let's put these faces up against the Quebecers. The Quebecers will lose, but it will be by disqualification, and they'll retain the belts. It's just kind of getting old.
Yeah, just further goes to show how weak the tag team division is at this time, because they're just throwing random people together.
Yeah.
The Hart brothers, Razor Ramon and 1-2-3 Kid, 1-2-3 Kid and Jannetty, just randomly throwing people in there against them.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a stellar match by any means, and I agree with both of you. It's just kind of, I don't know, unfortunate, because I've always liked a good tag team match, and going back and watching all of these really depressing ones was kind of a blow to morale for me personally. But one of the highlights of the tag team circuit were the Heavenly Bodies with Jim Cornette. And speaking of the Heavenly Bodies, the other match of the evening is Bret Hart defeating Dr. Tom Pritchard. That's the Doctor of Desire, Tom Pritchard of the Heavenly Bodies. I remember this match as being a pretty good match. It's not up there in order to qualify for match of the year or anything like that, but it was a very good technical match to watch. The pacing on it was really good. The in-ring storytelling was good. It's noteworthy. If you want to see a great match, go back and rewatch this one. The rest of this Raw is kind of trash, but the match itself was pretty good. And then in an announcement that we have during this Raw, it's announced that Randy Savage will challenge Yokozuna for the WWF Championship belt next week. And that's it. That's it for Raw 52. Raw 53, airing on February 28th. Not really much going on here. There's just your basic matches. At one point, the third match of the night is Earthquake defeating a guy by the name of Black Phantom. For those of you who are interested, Black Phantom goes on to later be Gangrel. We mentioned him last year in 1993. That's it.
There is a champ match this Raw.
Yeah, a throwaway match with Randy Savage.
They start it. They start Raw with Savage and Yokozuna in the championship match. I mean, I wasn't going to mention it because it's like you say, it's a throwaway match.
Yeah, it's like reaching a new low. It's like, let's throw Randy Savage in there for a throwaway match. Like, I don't know.
Not to mention, it's a match for the WWF Championship belt.
Right.
It's a throwaway match at the beginning of Raw. What the hell?
Yeah, it's just, again, it's more weird treatment with Randy Savage. It's just strange.
Yeah. There's an interview with Shawn Michaels backstage, and this kind of lays the groundwork. The whole storyline behind Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon going on to challenge for the undisputed Intercontinental title, I felt was a weak storyline, but just for posterity, this is laying the groundwork for it. Whenever Shawn Michaels was either fired or suspended or walked out or whatever the hell that was back in the end of 1993, he took his Intercontinental belt with him. They had a 20-man battle royale, and then the winners of that match faced each other to get the Intercontinental belt. Razor Ramon ended up winning. And they're hanging all of this on the fact that Shawn Michaels took his belt with him whenever he left for that. And now there are 2 Intercontinental titles. Shawn Michaels in this interview states that nobody has ever pinned him or defeated him for his belt. So it gives them a reason to have the ladder match. That's really what it boils down to.
And it was also a segment for the ladies.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really... Shawn Michaels was mostly naked for most of this. I guess that must have made an impression on you, Ryan.
He is the Heartbreak Kid.
Exactly. Everyone knows he's a ladies' man.
He is. The only other notable thing about this Raw is that Harvey Whippleman co-hosts, and it's not even really all that notable. He wasn't that great.
No, I was sad with how Harvey Whippleman, I was expecting a lot more out of him.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it. Disappointed, despite what Bobby Heenan says that Harvey Whippleman is pound for pound the toughest man walking the streets. He wasn't that great on the mic, unfortunately.
I really didn't think. Sorry to interrupt you there. I didn't really think that Harvey Whippleman was really that great in general. He's just like this squirrely little guy that you just kind of hate just by his looks. I mean, I don't know. He wasn't really that great on the mic.
See, that's what I had meant by I was excited going into this and was disappointed coming out of it, because I had never really gotten enough of Harvey Whippleman on the mic to form a solid judgment before. I thought that there was, like, for them to keep this guy around and for him to be, with the whole Giant Gonzalez and then Adam Bomb and just all of this shit that he's doing, I thought that there had to be a reason for him to be out there, and we just haven't seen it yet. That's why I was excited going into this. Like, great, I'm going to get to see the reason why Harvey Whippleman's still around. And I did not get that reason.
Well, and those people that you mentioned might be part of the reason why we never really got a whole lot out of Harvey Whippleman, because they put him with such shit.
Well, I mean, but that's another reason why I was excited for him, because, man, if those fucking meatheads that they put him with, if those crappy wrestlers need somebody of a high caliber to get them over, and they chose Harvey Whippleman for that job, that says more about Harvey Whippleman to me about the guys that he was managing. But like I said, I mean, it all fell flat.
Or they had so little confidence in those people, they decided, let's throw this piece of shit Harvey Whippleman at them. That's just another take. That's just another take.
Equally valid. Absolutely. Equally valid. I don't know what really else to say about that. That's going to close out February for us, though. Joe, did you have any wrestling news for the month of February 1994?
Well, as we know, Ludvig Borga suffered his broken ankle. They're saying he'll be out for at least 7 weeks. We know that 7 weeks turned into forever. Thank God. There's, at this time in our 1993 episode, we talked all about Hulk Hogan and him leaving. And at this time, February 94 is when rumors are really starting to swirl that WCW has given him a strong offer at this point. You guys will never believe this, but Marty Jannetty got fired again in February.
No. Did he break someone else's neck?
He didn't. No, he didn't do that, I don't think. But yeah, shit canned again. And Ted DiBiase, we see in a pretty different role now. We saw him with IRS as Money Inc. for a long time, all through 93, and now we see him as kind of a manager role. And I guess it's because he had a neck injury. Meltzer reported that he cannot wrestle until at least 1995 due to a neck injury that he has. But so, it's a Meltzer story, so I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems to line up.
Yeah.
And that's all I have for February.
All right, so we're going to move on then to March of 1994 with Raw 54 airing on March 7th. Unfortunately, we get Owen Hart paired up with Crush. Yeah, that is what it is. They defeat the Smoking Guns. Jeff Jarrett's in action. He defeats Virgil. Virgil comes back, guys. How about that?
Yay!
Yeah, in ring, not a very exciting Raw.
They haven't really given Jeff Jarrett much to work with.
No, they
since
haven't.
he debuted. And why are you putting Crush with Owen Hart? Owen Hart already has a great storyline going on his own.
Yeah.
Why are you putting Crush with him? It's just like, let's just throw Crush into everything to try to get him over, and it's just not working.
With Jeff Jarrett at this point, it seems like they're just doing their standard. The new guy that we're trying to push comes on. We're going to put him against some jobbers. And actually, Virgil, he's kind of the first somewhat actual named wrestler that he wrestles, because up until this, he was wrestling a lot of just Richard Byers type people.
Yeah.
When he wasn't setting up at the flea markets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, match-wise, nothing really all that exciting going on. And even though there is, oh gosh, I didn't see this. I didn't look ahead far enough in our notes. Oh, we'll get to it. So there's a couple things. Vince interviewing Owen Hart and Crush at ringside. And then we have a promo from Cy Sperling. For anybody out there that doesn't know, look him up. I don't really know exactly I can't remember what his product was. I think it was the Hair Club for Men, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And he was the president.
Yeah. Not only was he the president, he was a customer.
A client. I'm also a client as well.
That's all coming back to me in a rush. Yeah. So we get a promo from him to tell us that he's going to be the hair consultant for WrestleMania 10. He does show a pretty funny picture of Mr. Fuji with hair.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Joe, did you like Mr. Fuji with hair?
It was pretty, like you said.
Yeah.
It was pretty.
It was a good comedy segment.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the stuff with Cy Sperling is just, it's kind of pathetic, but it's also funny. So I mean, you have to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take what you can get. Next up is Vince hosting a special presentation ceremony. Oh man, we've got Chief Ray Little Turtle here, Chief Jay Strongbow, Chief Wahoo McDaniel, and they are honoring Tatanka. We'll just get this out of the way right now. The only person here, I shouldn't say that. I don't know about Wahoo McDaniel. Chief Jay Strongbow was not a Native American. He was an Italian American, pretty sure, from New York. I don't know about Wahoo McDaniel, but I'm pretty sure the only two actual Native Americans in the ring here are Chief Ray Little Turtle and Tatanka. Tatanka was legit Native American. He was from the Lumbee tribe, I think. But they present him with a headdress, and there is a lot of emotional talk here. Tatanka ends this segment with a war dance, and don't let me fool you here, folks. I've summarized this in 4 or 5 sentences, but this went on. This was a long segment in the middle of the ring, and as a matter of fact, I distinctly remember whenever we were doing our texting thread back when we were all watching this together, there was various talk about spots where we kind of had to fast forward through things, but I tried not to do that, because I wanted to get a complete immersion into the whole scene. But this is the only thing that I ever fast forwarded. And to me, just my personal opinion, in all of the 1993 to August of 94 time frame we are recapping in this Raw So Far series, this was the worst segment out of all of it. All of it. I know there are certain listeners out there that are not happy with the amount of negativity I sometimes throw at the mic here on some of these things, but this was horrible. Joe, start us off talking about this one.
Yeah, I'm not going to say much here, but they probably should have done this on Superstars if you're going to do something like this. There was no build up to this. Like, what the hell was this? I guess this is just so they could go with the IRS angle after. I don't know. It's this. There was no point to this. It was too long, like you said. And Tatanka just sucks. He's not that good. And he called Wahoo McDaniels. I noticed. Didn't even say his name right. Yeah, because I did watch the whole thing. I didn't fast forward, and I'm just so tortured by this now.
I'm not sure, like, did someone get injured and they had to cancel a match? And that's why this went on so long, because it just goes on and on and on. This headdress ceremony, how could it possibly take this long? It felt like it took as long as if we were actually on an Indian reservation and they were going through a full like day-long ceremony. I mean, that's what it felt like. They just needed to really wrap it up, make it quicker, because no one gives a shit about Tatanka. The only good thing about this is, you know, what we're going to head towards with IRS. That stuff is golden. So,
yeah,
I mean, if this is what we have to sit through to get to that, I guess it's worth it. I guess
they should have, instead of doing this, they should have had Cy Sperling come out and actually present the toupee to Mr. Fuji.
That would have been perfect.
Put the toupee on Mr. Fuji's head.
That would have been infinitely better than this. And you know, Joe, you had mentioned about how this is like just kind of out of nowhere, and you're absolutely right. You made me go back and look. I went and looked back through our notes. So this is happening in March. This is the first Raw of March, Raw 54. The last time we saw Tatanka was in the first match defeating Bam Bam Bigelow at the Royal Rumble. We haven't seen Tatanka since then.
Which that was the one that he was supposed to wrestle Ludvig Borga, right?
Yeah.
That was that one. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good note, because I didn't notice that.
Haven't seen him since then. He hasn't been on Raw, you know, at all between now and then. So out of nowhere, why the fuck are we getting this? But anyway, I think we should move on, because it's just, thankfully, I was really dreading that, just remembering it. But the last interview of this Raw, we've got Vince interviewing Jim Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies at ringside. Cornette trashes Luger and his Ford truck, and then goes on to praise that the Toyota that he owns. This is absolute gold from Jim Cornette. This is why I love Jim Cornette. We didn't get a Heavenly Bodies match, but I don't care. It was great. Joe, you had some notes on this one?
Yeah, nothing much to say. Just again, I love Jim Cornette at this time. He's great in the ring. These promos in the ring are always great. The Ford truck Toyota comment was great.
Anytime we get Cornette on the mic, it's great.
Yeah, so thankfully we ended with this and not the Tatanka segment.
Oh God, I don't know if I would have been able to keep going if we had ended with that. Oh, and just to keep people up to date on our cavalcade of co-hosts that we've got, this episode of Raw had the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase co-hosting with Vince, in case anybody was wondering. It wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't all that impressive to me. It was more of Ted DiBiase's money talk.
Yeah, it was mediocre.
Yeah. That whole thing, Ted DiBiase's gimmick is great in doses, small doses. 45 minutes of it was a bit much. But this is getting back to our, the Ryan, your theory of the go home match. This is the Raw that happens before WrestleMania 10. Maybe that's why that fucking headdress ceremony was so long. We didn't want to have too many people in ring.
They're just trying to use up as much time as possible.
Yeah, WrestleMania 10, March 20th. And I'm excited about this one because this has one of our match of the year candidates in it.
2 of them.
Yeah. So just for our listeners out there, to kind of just give you a quick reminder, in 1993, we had our match of the year candidates that we discussed in real time as they happened, you know, during our review of 1993. That's because we had already watched all of 1993 and we didn't really feel like belaboring it until making our final decision at the end. Now, in the case of 1994, we're only doing a recap for 94 up through SummerSlam. So after SummerSlam, we're going to go to our usual format of 1 episode of Raw per 1 episode of Wrestling Raw. And then at the end of 1994, we're going to do a final episode where we go back and do a much deeper dive into some of these matches, because in 1994, we've already got at least 3 match of the year candidates, and we don't know how many are going to be coming at us in the rest of 1994. So we're only going to briefly touch on it. The very first match of WrestleMania 10 is Owen Hart defeating Bret Hart. And we'll keep it brief, like I said, but this was a fantastic match. Joe, do you want to just give us a quick thing on it?
Yeah, this is that 6-month long feud, whatever it was. We're finally getting that match, and it was great. Everything about it was great. It couldn't have been more perfect. In my opinion, I haven't watched every single WrestleMania all the way through, but this is probably the best opening match of a WrestleMania ever. Probably. It's just two great wrestlers, just one move after. It's almost similar to the one that we talked about in 93 with Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. It's almost similar to that. Sort of had a similar finish too, a little bit.
Yeah.
And again, it's that quick finish. It sort of tells me, okay, these guys are just so good that you're not going to see their finisher because they're just too good. You got to get that quick win. I think that's kind of where they're going with that storyline within the ring. So I don't know. I mean, obviously we'll talk into the details later when we get to that point, but yeah, this lived up to the months of storytelling.
You guys both touched on it. It's just a great match. We're going to get into the deeper details later on, so I don't want to get too bogged down, but this is just an example of, these two wrestlers. It's pretty clear they're brothers because they've been just wrestling each other for decades at this point, because the moves are just rolling off of each other like the back of their hand. They know exactly what they want to do. They know what the other one's going to do. And it's like poetry in the ring going on right now between the two. And I can't wait to talk about it in depth later.
Yeah. Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of telegraphing going on with this. Great point there. Just the intuition that they had to have formed as brothers practicing against each other, sparring.
It's something that you don't see, and really you can't expect between two wrestlers a lot of times. But when you have two people that have just trained with each other so long, it stands out. Yeah,
I would have loved to have been a fly in the room, like during the times that they were talking about this match and practicing for the.
Yeah, but like we said, we'll come back to that at the end of 1994 and do a deeper dive into it. For the time being, though, we got to move it along. And here's something that's worth a deep dive. Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna Vachon defeating Doink and Dink in a mixed tag team match. Now, that's literally Bam Bam and Luna in one corner, both wrestling, and Doink and Dink in the opposing corner, both wrestling. Joe, how great was this match?
Somehow this did not win worst match of the card, according to the reader poll. I'll tell you who that was later, but this should have been a dark match. This was so bad. This is one of the worst matches that I think that I watched from 93 up until this point. Pay-per-view matches. This one is probably the worst.
At this point, I'm getting furious for Bam Bam Bigelow. Yeah. He's just so good, and he just keeps time and time again getting put into these just throw off worthless matches that aren't going to go anywhere, clearly, because it's a mixed tag team. Where's that going to go? It's just so sad for Bam Bam.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. It was a shit show. I would have maybe been a little bit more impressed with it. Not a whole lot, because I generally dislike mixed tag team matches just because there's you can't really establish a very good flow with that.
They're always shit.
Yeah. But I would have liked it maybe a little better if there wasn't a damn little person in the mix. That's what really ruined it for me. If this had maybe been Doink and Alundra Blaze, I mean, I know Alundra Blaze has a match later on, so that was obviously out of the running for it.
Grab someone.
Yeah, somebody that's equal to Luna Vachon that could take part in this. That would have
not
made
a midget.
A little bit better. Yeah, I mean, it was just
not mini macho.
Well, it was, but just not. It's the same guy, but for a WrestleMania match in Madison Square Garden, we know how Vince loves Madison Square Garden, and you put this after that opening match. It's just, my God, just put this on the dark match.
Yeah, it seems like the type of match I would have got at the Newcastle, gymnasium on a Saturday afternoon. This isn't a WrestleMania match.
Exactly right.
You already have your comedy with Cy Sperling being a guest. You already have that, and then we'll get into the other comedy. There's too much comedy going on in this. This WrestleMania seriously had potential to be worse than WrestleMania 9, but it was saved by a few really awesome matches.
Yeah, it had two great matches that really saved it.
And the next match isn't one of them. Randy Savage defeating Crush in a Falls Count Anywhere match. There's not much to say about that. I don't know about you guys. I don't really have any, extreme notes on that.
Yeah, no Crush match is worth talking about.
No, the only thing worth noting is, we get to put to bed this Randy Savage Crush feud.
I had completely forgotten about it. That's how useless it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because you threw Randy Savage into a throwaway match against Yokozuna on some random Raw. So they didn't even keep the feud going.
Yeah. Throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. So the next match, it really wasn't all that great, but it's notable because it is a WWF Women's Championship match at WrestleMania. So, like I said, the match itself wasn't all that entertaining, but Alundra Blaze did defeat Leilani Kai to retain the WWF Women's Championship belt. And while the in-ring work wasn't anything to write home about, just the simple fact that we have a Women's Championship match at not just a pay-per-view, but the banner fucking pay-per-view for the WWF at the time. It's a step in the right direction. We have the Men on a Mission defeating the Quebecers by a count out at a WrestleMania.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 9. Anyway.
Yeah, but still, it's so sad. I mean, it's the tag team belts, and it's going to be a DQ at a WrestleMania. We're not even going to have a clean win. Come on.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. It is what it is. But that leads us to that whole, I can't even keep it in my mind, the whole structure of the convoluted championship thing going on. Because remember, since Lex Luger won the coin toss, that's what we were talking about before. Lex Luger won the coin toss, meaning that Owen Hart would have to face Bret Hart at the beginning of this WrestleMania. That was the only good thing to come of any of that. Because Luger won the coin toss, because Owen Hart defeated Bret Hart, even though Bret lost, he still, I don't know. Guys, can you help me out with this one? Because even though Bret Hart lost.
Well, so he lost, although he still has the right to this match. The whole idea behind the extra match was to just make sure that he had a match and was tired out equally like the other guy that will be going.
Okay.
The only idea behind it here.
Okay. Yeah, that helps out a lot. Because like I said, I was having such trouble keeping all of this contained in my brain at the same time. Well, anyway, the next match is Yokozuna defeating Lex Luger by disqualification to retain the WWF Championship belt. The match itself sucked. What was notable to me was Mr. Perfect guest refereeing, and he was a perfect referee, as to be expected. Joe, did you have any notes on that match?
Yeah, clearly this is them going with an angle with Mr. Perfect and Lex Luger, because finally Vince decided that he's not going to put the belt on Luger by this point. So I guess he thought he would go that direction where he's going to go with the Luger Perfect feud. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much to say about it.
Yeah, there's not much to be said. Now, on the other hand, the next match, Earthquake defeating Adam Bomb. Ryan, I know you're excited about this.
I am, because if you watch this match, it is just a humiliation of Adam Bomb. Earthquake, this is the definition of a squash match. Earthquake comes out and just pummels Adam Bomb. And this will be the beginning of the fall of Adam Bomb. I will touch on it again in about 2 weeks from now. We'll really highlight the fall of Adam Bomb, but this is the beginning of it. Yay.
It's great, but let's not forget the fact that they're building Adam Bomb up to be this monster.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden they probably should have just cut this match, because obviously squash matches happen most of the time because of timing. So
Yeah,
it's surprising they didn't just cut this match. They decided, fuck Adam Bomb.
But it's I mean, it really seems like it was we want to try and push over Earthquake, and we're about to say fuck you, Adam Bomb.
Yeah, they go from this guy's a monster to fuck you, Adam Bomb.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that it's a squash match, and one of the not top guys, but one of the people that they've been promoting as a monster is the one getting squashed. So,
yeah, he squashed so many people.
Yeah. It is what it is. We'll move on to the next match, which is another. So we've got two in the same pay-per-view. This was exciting for me. The next contender for match of the year. This is Razor Ramon defeating Shawn Michaels in a ladder match to retain the WWF Intercontinental Championship belt. Again, we're not going to get deep into this because we're going to save it for the end of 1994. But suffice to say, fantastic match. Joe?
Yeah, this is great. It goes back to one of my other comments on the other shows where the IC belt just meant more back then than it does now. And I think it's great when two guys like this are just like, let's just go out and have arguably the best match of the night, get people to follow that. One thing I read too is that I guess Shawn Michaels was injured before this match at some point. So he worked this match injured, which is pretty impressive.
It didn't show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't show at all.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, and we'll be going into this in more depth, but just to reiterate, just so fun to watch. And first ladder match that we're going to see in the WWE, and they set the bar high.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, another interesting thing that I heard somewhere at some point was that I guess Bret Hart is the one that sort of invented the ladder match. I think it was on a Bruce Pritchard podcast. Bret Hart, I think, had a ladder match with somebody at some point before this on like a house show. And yeah, so they used that and put it on a pay-per-view with these two guys.
I did not know that.
It worked out greatly.
Yeah, it's just great storytelling in the ring, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah. And also noteworthy because like Ryan mentioned there, this is the first ever televised ladder match in the WWF. So
yeah,
noteworthy on a lot of fronts there. But we'll keep it moving here. Like I said, we don't want to get too far into that because believe me, folks, it's easy to get far into that because of how great it is. But we're going to push it along to the championship match. Bret Hart defeating Yokozuna to win the WWF Championship belt. Fucking finally, Yokozuna is no longer the champion, and Bret is getting his due. I'm not as big of a fan of Bret as I am of Owen. I still like Bret. I think Owen's better, but couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Couldn't have happened to a better wrestler, except maybe Owen. But Bret, I was happy to see Bret take the belt off of Yokozuna here. Roddy Piper guest refereed this match. Joe, did you have any additional notes about that you wanted to get with us?
Yeah, I mentioned it before. I think watching all this again is just reminding me how great guys like Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, at this time, it's just a reminder of how great they were back then. The Roddy Piper guest referee thing, I don't know. I didn't really understand how that fit in.
Yeah, it was kind of a throw out type thing.
Yeah. Again, the match was sort of just not that great, but it's finally, we're moving in a different direction. Yokozuna is not going to be the top guy. Thank God.
Yeah.
Bret Hart, I guess Vince finally decided Bret's my guy, and we start to see Luger sort of move down the card too. So all good things.
Thankfully, we finally lose Yokozuna as champ. Bret Hart takes over the belt, and it ends the era of Yokozuna, which was just sad. This match was not great by any means because it involved Yokozuna, as always. Even though you have Bret Hart in the match, even he can't really elevate Yokozuna to make an exciting match. But I'm happy to see Yokozuna lose the belt finally, and we get to move forward.
Yeah. And it should also be noted that not only was this a bad match, and because it was Yokozuna, but it was Yokozuna's second match of the night, which made him even slower and sloppier.
Somehow.
Yeah. Just when you thought it couldn't happen, it gets worse. And the other interesting thing to note here, and I'm sure you guys will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Yokozuna goes straight from headlining WrestleMania to being a mid-carder after this. There's not a taper off. There's not a slow drawdown of Yokozuna where he has like one or two rematches and then
he gets no rematch here.
Yeah, he goes straight to mid-card after this with no fucking stopping in between.
Yeah, which is very interesting. You would think King of the Ring, the next pay-per-view, he would have a rematch, but yeah.
Or at least him losing in like a semifinal match or something, you know?
Obviously, it was, hey, you're too fat.
Yeah, we're over it.
Yeah, you're done. You're too fat.
We can't pay for your food and Roddy Piper's refereeing salary at the same time. God damn it! But yeah, for me, it's a good way to cap off WrestleMania 10. We get two of the great matches of 94 in there. We get Yokozuna the hell out of the driver's seat as far as the championship goes. There were a couple notable things as far as promos and interviews going on. At one point, Cy Sperling fit Fink with a rug, and Fink was wearing the rug all night. He looked great in it.
He did. I was surprised at how good that rug looked on him.
Yeah.
It was much more exciting than the Tatanka headdress ceremony.
Yes, it was.
Naturally.
Yes, it was. In another, this one was great. I enjoyed this. So there was a presidential box there at WrestleMania 10, and they had a Bill Clinton impersonator up there sitting with Jack Tunney and IRS.
He looked the role. I got to give him that.
He did. That was a great impersonator. Yeah.
I don't know. Watching this now, this was so bad to me. I don't know how well it was accepted at the time, but just watching it now, I don't know. It's just so bad and cheesy, and Todd Pettengill just makes it worse.
He makes everything worse.
I hated all of it, all the Bill Clinton stuff.
I just liked the because, all through 93 and through 94, at various points we mentioned how Vince is very topical and is constantly talking about current events. And one of the things that he loves to harp on are the Clintons.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was like it was par for the course, but it was taking it to the next level. Like we're not going to just talk about Clintons and, Vince's opinions of them. We're going to have a fucking Bill Clinton impersonator here. Not only are we going to have a Bill Clinton impersonator, we're going to seat him in a presidential box with fucking IRS, really, really tie him into the whole tax situation that Vince loves to bitch about, Yeah,
it's a good way to get a shot in on Bill Clinton, I guess, if you're Vince McMahon. Yeah. But like I said, there's just too much. To me, there was just too much comedy in this WrestleMania. They could have done without some of it.
Well, you do have to admit, though, it is a step up from pay-per-views in general at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, look at WrestleMania 9, look at Royal Rumble, we got, there's the comedy, but we got two goddamn great matches out of this WrestleMania.
Right.
Other notable happenings for this WrestleMania, Jerry the King Lawler co-hosted, so that was something. It was good to hear him at ringside. He's always a good job there. Little Richard sang America the Beautiful, and it was rough.
the weird Michael Jackson noises. I don't understand.
Yeah,
but the lip syncing was so bad. It was weird.
It just felt odd.
The only other really notable thing we've got here was that Alundra Blaze's opponent, Leilani Kai, she wrestled in both WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 10. So it's good to see the women's division getting a little bit of their just due there. So we won't dwell on it, but like I said, it's good to see it happening. And that's going to be it for WrestleMania 10. We're going to keep it moving to the next Raw 55, airing on March 21st. We're back. We're back to not a whole lot. Some notable weirdness. The final match of the night, we've got Jeff Jarrett defeating Koko Beware. Koko Beware out of nowhere. Ryan, what'd you think of this match? Anything?
I loved Koko Beware when I was young, so seeing him have to job to Double J here was a little sad. Just seeing, a favorite of mine like this have to reduce himself to being a jobber.
Yeah.
I think I remember reading something about Coco got injured. Coco and Owen Hart were high energy tag team.
Yeah.
And I think Coco maybe got injured at some point, and then Owen started the feud with Brett. So it's like, all right, well,
what are we gonna do with him?
Yeah. Let's just have him be a jobber, I guess.
Didn't even have the bird, did he?
No, I don't think so at this point.
I don't remember him having the parrot with him. Double punching the balls there.
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame, so they made up for it later, I guess.
And he had enough other notable characters.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good spin to put on it. You're right. For promos and interviews, not a whole lot going on. Vince interviews the Quebecers and Johnny Polo. They talk about, this is just such shit. They talk about how they'll take on any challengers. And then out of nowhere, Lou Albano comes out and asks if they will take on a team of his choosing and put the belts up for it. They accept that challenge. Ryan, did you have something on this one?
So this is something I obviously had no clue of, but recently was listening to the Pritchard podcast, and he told this story about what happened here. And supposedly Captain Lou would come constantly to Vince and try and pitch him new ideas. Hey, can I do this? Oh, can I be the manager of this tag team or this person? And I guess at some point, Vince got sick of talking to Lou, and he pushes him to Bruce and says, go talk to Bruce. He'll decide. So Bruce got pissed off at Vince always pushing off his garbage to him. So he just said, yeah, sure, Lou, you could be the managers of the Head Shrinkers. So this all came about as just Pritchard kind of saying a fuck you to Vince, stop pushing your garbage onto me. So he okayed Captain Lou to come on to here, and Vince, from what Pritchard said, kind of got the idea and backed off throwing his garbage to Pritchard.
I guess in Lou Albano's defense, he did make Vince a lot of money in the 80s when he was doing the MTV stuff with Cyndi Lauper and everything. So
yeah, well, let's not forget about Mario.
Yes.
Oh, never forget Mario. But I just want to throw out there, this is a great place to do it. I just want to throw out there that the three of us, me, Joe, and Ryan here, are big fans of Something to Wrestle, Conrad Thompson and Bruce Pritchard. We're fans of Grill and JR. That's Conrad Thompson and Jim Ross. So a lot of this stuff that we reference in these recap episodes, we some of it we get from them. So just a shout out to them real quick, because I don't know about you guys, but listening to them is what inspired me to want to do this podcast. So
yeah, they're the best in the game.
Yeah, they set the bar, and it's a bar that we're trying to match with our 11 and dropping subscribers. But full credit to them on paving the way to get us and our asses in these seats doing this. So anyway, moving on. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this Raw, IRS does a promo from his office, and he gives us like these lists. He gives us the top reasons to pay taxes, the top reasons why people are tax cheats, the top reasons why you should not cheat on your taxes. We mentioned it before. IRS is great in doses, and this is one of those things. He is fantastic in this promo. My personal opinion, like I said before, I'm a fan of IRS, so I won't geek out too much on it, but we also get to an interview. Vince interviews the new WWF champion, Bret Hart, in ring, and Bret says that he is taking on all challengers. That was great to hear. Ryan, I think you agree with me on that one.
It's just going back to the old shtick of Bret Hart. He's the fighting champ. I'm glad to see them bring it back and continue that with his current title hold. So I was glad to see that.
Yeah, because Yokozuna defended the title, like 3-4 times in a year?
If that.
Yeah. Pay-per-views, and then whenever he's not squashing Randy Savage. But we'll keep it moving here. Next up, we've got Raw 56 airing on March 28th. Not a whole lot going on here. We're going to start to get into this a little more now. Even in promos and interviews, there's not quite a whole lot going on. We do get some screen time with Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette does an in-ring interview with the Quebecers and Johnny Polo, and Lou Albano comes out and confirms that Polo has officially accepted the challenge from last week. Quebecers and Johnny Polo are laughing it up when the Head Shrinkers emerge as Albano's new team. The Quebecers and Johnny Polo try to back out, but no dice. Starting to get a teensy bit of life breathed into the old tag team scene here. What do you think, Joe?
I don't know. I like this. This is a tease because I definitely thought they were going to introduce some new tag team that would surprise everybody with where they were going with this. But it ends up being the Head Shrinkers, and it does nothing for me. But the way they went with this angle, it almost seemed like, okay, well, we have this surprise for everybody. Here's Lou Albano. And then it's like, we have another surprise, and it's these guys that already exist and already have a manager. I didn't.
And nobody cares about already.
Yeah, right.
I do have to say, first of all, I completely agree with you on all of that. You're absolutely right. I think it's for the best, though. I mean, we're going to wind up, not to get too far ahead here, but we're going to wind up with the Quebecers not being the champs anymore. And of the tag team scene that we have going on right now, I mean, it doesn't really say much, but the Head Shrinkers were one of the best ones.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
I mean, again, this isn't anything to write home about, but it's better than what it has been.
The backstage issues with the Steiners, I think, is what it was really just disappointing because it could have been so much better with them in the mix.
Yes.
More in the mix.
Yes, agreed.
But they had to sort of try to go with what they have in-house already with the Head Shrinkers, and it's just, I don't know. It was a nice build-up, I guess, for them, and it kind of got them over just because, like we mentioned before, people just hate the Quebecers just because they suck.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I guess it kind of worked a little bit for the Head Shrinkers, but just did nothing for me. It's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're not wrong in any of that. Just like I said, it's nice to see just a teensy bit of freshness trying to happen here with the tag teams. Notable happenings in this episode of Raw are Jim Cornette co-hosting. That was good. That was almost a little too much Jim Cornette for me, though. It didn't push me over the line, but it came close to it. And we get another sighting of the Black Phantom, a.k.a. Gangrel, who I found out whenever I was doing research, he was romantically involved with Luna Vachon in real life.
Yes.
Joe, you were impressed with a certain part of this. What did you have noted for that?
Nothing impressive, really. Just wanted to mention that we've already mentioned it, that Black Phantom had become a non-jobber later on as Gangrel.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned one of our 93 episodes is that they were actually talking about, there were rumors of him doing a vampire gimmick all the way back then.
Yeah, you did mention
that.
Yeah,
they just never did it till later.
Whenever they do it later with the whole, ministry and all that shit, it fit a lot more than it would have back then, I think. I think maybe back then it would have been a little too extreme because they would have had to have used
maybe it was
some kind of fake blood in some way, and they probably couldn't get around censors with that.
Yeah, that's true. Probably would have been a little too edgy. Or maybe he just said to Vince, like, hey, I always wanted to be a vampire. And Vince said, no, you're Black Phantom.
We need another guy with a mask.
Yeah, gimmick jobbers just weren't really that great, right? Brooklyn Brawler. Toxic Turtles.
Now, don't be talking shit on the Brooklyn Brawler. Come on.
I mean, the fact that he was like 4 other gimmicks sort of ruins it.
Yeah, you are right. But yeah, we'll keep it moving here. So Joe, was there any news going on in March 94?
Probably one of the most interesting things I read was that at a house show in February, so this was before WrestleMania, before Vince decided he's going with Brett as his champion. I guess at a house show, he had Lex Luger come out for an interview in the ring while wearing the belt to see how the crowd reacted. And that is real. That actually happened, which is like hard to believe.
And no one cared.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. We mentioned before how Vince loves, to throw out the pop culture references. at this time, everybody knows who Tanya Harding is. We don't need to get into that that detail. But you guys remember all these episodes, they were mentioning her name quite a bit. Well, apparently she was, Japan was offering her $2 million to become a pro wrestler. Like she was actually going to get into wrestling at this time.
That would have been great.
Yeah. See what else we have here. WrestleMania reader poll. It got a 74% thumbs up. So pretty good reaction from the readers here. The best match voted by readers was the ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon. And the worst match was not Bam Bam and Luna versus Doink and Dink. It was voted as Lex Luger versus Yokozuna.
That's perfect.
Right.
Well deserved.
Right. Dave Meltzer actually called the Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon match probably the best match ever on a WWF pay-per-view at that point. So He was very impressed with it as well. This is a good one here. This is probably my favorite part of the news in March of 1994 is that there was heat on Little Richard because he immediately left. Immediately left after America the Beautiful and didn't sign autographs for anyone backstage. And he also appeared on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno shortly after and never even mentioned WrestleMania. So fuck Little Richard. Yeah, that's all I have. The celebrity, speaking of Little Richard, it seems like they really reached for celebrities on this WrestleMania.
They did.
I don't know.
They did. And I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because something that I had noted here that I didn't get a chance to slip in earlier was that one of the great things about their whole the celebrity thing that they had going on with WrestleMania, it inspired me to look up on Google Rhonda Shear nude. So, there's a benefit too. But
yes.
We won't dwell on it.
Yeah, I guess there's another thing. Jenny Garth was on this, and she supposedly turned down. She was supposed to be part of a vignette and turned it down, like refused to do it because it was in bad taste. But no details on what that was. Burt Reynolds probably wanted to make out with her or something, and she refused.
Yeah. Yeah, now you've really got me curious. I wonder what could have been in such bad taste for WrestleMania.
Right. With a Bill Clinton impersonator there.
Exactly. All right, so that's closing out March for us. We're going to get to April here. April's going to be the last month we cover here in this episode. April of 1994 starts with Raw 57 airing April 4th. First match of this Raw is Earthquake defeating Adam Bomb. Ryan, you had a little note on this one?
Yeah, so this is a rematch of the squash match from Royal Rumble, and this kind of really marks the end for Adam Bomb. I mean, this won't be the last time we see him, but during the match, we even get a quote from Vince McMahon saying, Adam Bomb is fighting for his career. So, I mean, like, Vince McMahon's really highlighting the fact that this is the end of Adam Bomb. And if he loses, wink, wink, he's probably on his descent.
I don't even think the wink, wink was implied. I'm pretty sure he winked. So, yeah, there's not really anything going on in the ring that is worth talking about. There are highlights of Mr. Promo. There are promo highlights. Mr. Perfect costing, that's in quotes, costing Lex Luger the belt at WrestleMania 10, followed up by Lex Luger talking about having a problem with Mr. Perfect and looking forward to meeting Perfect in the ring. This continues on with Gorilla Monsoon doing an in-ring interview with Mr. Perfect. Monsoon criticizes Perfect's ability as a referee, citing disappointment after Yoko, Luger, and Jack Tunney all agreed on Perfect as the ref. Just as per usual, Mr. Perfect hits a perfect line where he simply states that he refereed the match perfectly. And there's not much else to say about that. Ryan, I'm pretty sure you agree with me on that one.
Yeah, it was great. And I just love seeing Mr. Perfect back in the heel role because that's where I really love to see Mr. Perfect. I don't like him as a baby face, but I can't get enough of him when he's a heel.
Yeah, agreed. We have flashbacks, we have call-ins, we have a somewhat disappointing edition of the Heartbreak Hotel. That's about it. Notable happenings for Raw 57. We've got Gorilla Monsoon co-hosting, so that's something. Always good to hear from Gorilla. And more notably for me personally, this is going to be the last appearance of Rick Martel on WWF television until he winds up subbing for Jim Neidhart in the 1995 Royal Rumble. But Rick was part of some pretty decent storylines over the past year and 4 months. So I was sad to find out that this is going to be the last time we see Rick Martel for a while. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely notable that it's really the end of him because, like you said, he had some great feuds, especially that one with Jake the Snake. That was pretty great back in, I think it was like 91. So yeah, just definitely worth noting that this is his last appearance, I guess, until being a random entrant in the Royal Rumble in 95. So that's it. Just wanted to note that.
Absolutely. So we're going to carry on through to Raw 58, airing April 11th. We've got Virgil in a match again, everybody. Virgil was spotted in the ring underneath Diesel as he was getting pinned. So here, the Quebecers are going to defeat, for the final match of the night, the Quebecers are going to defeat Men on a Mission to retain the WWF Tag Team Championships. What a horrible match in general. The Quebecers and Men on a Mission, just two absolute turd burgers in the tag team world. We're getting close to the end of it, though. So did you guys have any words you wanted to throw out there about the Quebecers run as champs in general?
We've kind of been touching on it all night, so there's not a ton to touch on, but the Quebecers are a disappointment, and it's just upsetting that we're going to see so much of them in the tag team world here.
Yeah, there's just nothing exciting about going back and watching the Quebecers, unfortunately. That just everything we've seen with the tag team division has just not been good, with the exception of the small doses of the Steiners.
Yeah, agreed on all points. They're just... And it can't be said enough. The tag team scene was just in shambles for a solid... Well, I mean, it's kind of still in shambles whenever we cut off up at SummerSlam. So hopefully that gets better in 94, because it's a shame. I like tag team matches, and I don't like what's happening in the tag team scene here. As far as promos and interviews go, not too much. We do get a Jerry Lawler is carried out to his King's Court in a sedan chair. The jobbers carrying the sedan chair, one of which is D'Lo Brown. For anybody out there paying attention, he wasn't bobbing his head or anything, so I know it's kind of hard to recognize him, but that was definitely D'Lo Brown carrying that sedan chair. Right whenever they get to the ring, they stumble and drop the sedan, causing a crash. I thought that was a pretty good, funny little scene to watch. Perfect for Jerry the King Lawler. Lawler brings out Lex Luger as his guest. They argue. And Lawler is on the side of Mr. Perfect. They go over clips from Luger's WrestleMania 10 loss. They show examples of what Luger was doing to earn the loss, and that Mr. Perfect was acting as a perfect referee. Of course, Luger disagrees, resolves to be the champion, and dares Perfect to get in the ring with him. I personally don't have much to say about all of this. Joe, what do you have?
Yeah, I don't have much other than it's worth rewatching this Raw just to see Jerry Lawler and
yes.
and what happens.
It's the only thing about the King Court that matters is him falling.
Because obviously this Mr. Perfect Luger thing goes nowhere, and who cares about that? But yeah,
but watch it for him falling.
Yes, it's great.
So later on, also we have this is a nice little vignette. We have footage of the Macho Man and the Bushwhackers taking part in the White House Easter egg roll. And then IRS does an in-ring promo reminding people that they are tax cheats. They have 4 days left to pay their taxes. And he then starts his feud with Tatanka by claiming that Tatanka has not paid the gift tax on the ceremonial headdress that was given to him during Raw 54. The feud itself, it was whatever, but this promo was great. Ryan, what'd you think?
Yeah, like you said, the actual feud itself with Tatanka pretty worthless, but when IRS pulled out the "you didn't pay the gift tax on that headdress," I lost it. It was one of the funniest things I heard in a long time because I was not expecting it. I completely forgot about this feud between them two. And him pulling out that line, I was just rolling. I loved it.
Yeah, and it kind of makes the whole headdress ceremony a little bit more tolerable, I guess.
Yeah, you can stomach it now.
If this is where they were going with it, yeah. At the White House.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing was just, I don't know. I do agree, but it is what it is. We're gonna move it on from there. That was it for that Raw. So, there wasn't even anything else really notable happening there. Next up is Raw 59, airing on April 18th. The first match of the night is Bret Hart defeating the master of the martial arts, Kwang, by submission. And you guys, I mean, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan for this one, but man, did they try to push Kwang.
Yeah. That's really the only note I have is just how hard they're really trying to push over Kwang. He's pretty new at this point, and Bret Hart gives him a hell of a match. It's not a bad match to go back and watch. Unfortunately, Bret Hart does pull out an injury to the wrist early on, as he likes to do, but ultimately he's going to get the win over Kwang as expected, but surprisingly not a bad match.
Yeah, I don't know what Kwang did to deserve a shot at Bret Hart, but yeah, whatever. Yeah. Like you said, it wasn't a terrible match, but it's, of all people, Kwang. I guess they just wanted to have Bret Hart show that he is a fighting champ and put the belt on the line on a Raw, and I guess it's going to be Kwang, so that's what we got.
We'll put him against a mid-carder instead of a complete jobber.
Right.
Yeah, so there's other stuff that that happens in this Raw. We get some talk from Lou Albano about whether or not the Quebecers are gonna rematch or not rematch. Take on the head shrinkers for the belts because that's still up in the air apparently. Something of a positive note, we get our first Raw appearance of Duke the Dumpster Droese. Yeah, we've got a street somewhere out in America because he's the real American as far as I'm concerned. He's more of an American than fucking Lex Luger, being a garbage man and all. He's working for a living. This promo is some street somewhere. Duke the Dumpster Droese is riding the garbage truck, picking up trash. He's high-fiving his fellow trash man. And he tells us that he's on his way to the WWF and won't take any trash unless he wants to.
And he is total trash.
He is. Oh man, it was good though. He won't take any trash unless he wants to.
It is funny.
Yeah. We get a King's Court. Lawler has WWF Women's Champion Alundra Blaze on. She calls the King's Court a low-rent knockoff of Piper's Pit, so that was good to hear. He then brings out Luna Vachon, and we get kind of a feud. Like we mentioned before, it would have been really great to see an actual wrestling in-ring feud between these two, but it never really happens. But again, good to have the women's champ out there and in front of cameras. We get a clip from Superstars of IRS attacking Tatanka and destroying the ceremonial headdress because Tatanka hasn't paid the gift tax on it. That's about as far as that went. And that's it. We've got a Johnny Polo vignette. We noted that this is going to be the first Raw appearance of Duke the Dumpster Droese, but on a much sadder note, this is going to be the final Raw appearance for the Steiner brothers. One of my favorite tag teams of all time. A goddamn shame to lose them because we really could have used them in the past months in a more, frequent basis. What do you guys want to say about the Steiners? Joe, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, it's a shame because I think at this time they were really in their prime. And anytime that I was watching these old episodes and they were on, I was glued to the screen watching because they were awesome. They were just an awesome tag team in a tag team division that was total shit at this point. It's a shame that they had some backstage problems, whatever that was. And, yeah, but I enjoyed it while it lasted.
Yeah, very sad. Right now we have one of the all-time great tag teams with the Steiner brothers, at least as far as I'm concerned. and were wasting time with the head shrinkers and the Quebecers. And now the Steiner brothers are gone. So just upsetting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the issue was. I don't think any of us really are. But Jesus, just give them what they want. Let them stick around. I have a hard time believing that Vince didn't see the shittiness of the situation in all of this and wasn't willing to at least bend a little bit to their demands just to keep them around, just to keep something interesting in the tag team scene. Because, man, it was shit. But anyway, Steiner Brothers, we hardly knew ye. It was good while it lasted. What a sad way to get to the end of April. But we have one more episode of Raw left here in April. And that's Raw 60, airing on April 25th. As far as matches go, not a whole lot. We've got Owen Hart defeating Rich Myers. We all know and love Rich Myers for the headlining match. We do get a match with the Heavenly Bodies. I personally think the Heavenly Bodies could have done more in the tag team scene. They were a great tag team. They could have freshened things up a teensy bit more instead of WWF hanging their hats on people like the Quebecers and the Head Shrinkers, but whatever. As far as promos and interviews go, not too much going on. Various little snippets and scenes. We've got backstage with Shawn Michaels and Diesel. At this point, Diesel is the Intercontinental Champ. When did that happen?
So it was on Superstars.
That would be why we didn't get to it, because at first I was a little bit confused there for a second.
Yeah, again, it's just at the time they were really doing a lot of title changes on house shows and Superstars and stuff like that. Try to boost the ratings and ticket sales.
That's kind of a shame. I would have liked to have seen that in this. And I mean, there's nothing stopping us from going back and rewatching it, but that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving along. We get backstage promos from Johnny Polo and the Quebecers bitching about the whole Lou Albano Head Shrinkers thing. It's weak, of course. King's Court, Nikolai Volkov is the guest. Lawler makes fun of Volkov pretty well. Lawler does a great job here of really shitting on Nikolai Volkov. Because now remember, we mentioned this back in, what was that, February? Nikolai Volkov has been a guest at all of these Raws, almost all of them, at ringside in a front row seat. So after inviting him up to the ring, Lawler makes fun of Volkov. Just, he's poor, all that kind of thing. Volkov gets a little bit weird and heartfelt and says that he lost his money in bad investments. But he then goes on to challenge Lawler at any time. And Lawler says that anyone that has a job offer for Nikolai should give him a call. And this is gonna start kind of an interesting thing in the WWF. Ryan, why don't you start that discussion there?
We touched on it before. So not only is this kind of sad what they're kind of doing to Nikolai Volkov here, humiliating him, but it's going to be setting him up to join the $1 Million Man stable. So that's kind of what we're leading up to. There will be a bit of a payoff for the humiliation of a veteran like Nikolai Volkov. So we at least have that to look forward to.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of any of this, really. Rewatching all of this, Lawler was good. I just thought it was totally random, and obviously it makes a little more sense now knowing that Ted DiBiase was injured. So they're probably thinking of, things that they can do with him because they don't want to not have him on screen because he's so great. But this is, I don't know, this stuff was just not good in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, I agree with both of you. For me, what stood out the most was this contrast, and we've mentioned it before in 1993, and it continues on here in 94. The contrast between the stated business plan of the new generation, and now here we're pulling, of all fucking people, Nikolai Volkov up to the ring. He is not new. He's not part of the new generation at all. Why is my big thing. Why of everybody, why Nikolai Volkov? I get, and I have a better appreciation for hearing that about his injury, but I get the whole thing with the $1 Million Man. It was in keeping with the new generation. It was great to have him transition to like a manager type of role. And, he could still get up and get on the mic and give a good promo, but he could stay out of the ring and let the new generation do the work in the ring and continue to build that tagline of the whole new generation. And he kind of does that later on whenever he starts to really build the $1 million corporation. But at this point, like I said, it's discordant between the stated purpose of the path forward in the WWF with the new generation to then bring up Nikolai fucking Volkov. That's really all I have to say about it. I like what happens later on. I like, with the $1 million corporation, that gets us to Tatanka in the single greatest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling. So without this little bit here with Nikolai, we probably wouldn't have gotten to that point. And I can't, downplay that too much. But yeah, it's like I said, it's just the whole discordance between Nikolai Volkov and New Generation that I didn't like about it. But one of the better parts about this Raw is that we're starting to get more frequent Undertaker sightings. Some of these are pretty entertaining. Some of them aren't, obviously. It depends on who they're interviewing. But in this one, we get a deli man. Apparently, Undertaker came into the deli and ordered a 6-foot wedge. And the guy turned around to make the sandwich, and then he turns around to get the pickles, and Taker was gone.
This deli man. The deli man was great.
Yeah. The gas station guy.
Yeah. Wherever that he came from. Good job. But this is where it starts to take a downturn here, the whole Undertaker thing.
Yeah, as much as I've loved the Undertaker promos and vignettes, this one, and these in general, the sightings start to go a little off the rails.
Yeah. But come on, I mean, who doesn't love the idea of the Undertaker in his fucking hat and coat and, with the eyes rolled back in his head, walking into a deli and saying, "Give me a 6-foot wedge."
With pickles.
With pickles. Yeah, don't forget the fucking pickles. Those are for Paul Bearer. But yeah, I agree. It's the start of the decline of all of this, and we'll get to the meat of that decline in part 2 of Raw So Far 1994. We round out this episode of Raw with Lou Albano talking up the head shrinkers, and that's about it. There's a scuffle between him and Johnny Polo, and yeah, that's it. That's going to round out April. Joe, what kind of April news do you have for us?
Yeah, a few things that are noteworthy here. Number one, the steroid trial that's been going on. Well, it's been being talked about for a while. It's about to begin very shortly. I'm trying to look at a few other things. We already talked about a few of these other things. Another lawsuit related topic was that Jesse Ventura was awarded $800,000 for his lawsuit against Titan Sports. Ryan, I think you know a little bit about this, right?
Yeah, he was just, I was listening to his interview with Stone Cold on Stone Cold's podcast, and he was talking about this exact incident and how he believes, at least as of right now, he is still the only wrestler to continuously get royalty checks from the WWF. So to this day, he still gets royalty checks because of this ruling. So way to go, Body.
Yeah, 800,000. He was asking for 2 million, so he got 800,000, which is a pretty nice number there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sort of random here. Perry Saturn got a tryout at this time, but the jobber, I guess, did not work well and didn't make Perry Saturn look very good. So Perry Saturn did not join WWF yet at this time. And Crush, everybody's favorite wrestler here on Wrestling Raw, is now using a heart punch as his finisher.
Oh my God.
And we'll end the news on that.
No need to dwell.
We're now down to 5 subscribers. Yeah, so we're going to end this episode of Wrestling Raw there on that very unfortunate note of Crush. We'll be back with part 2 of Raw So Far 1994, starting in May of 1994, and then we'll get to our other matches of the year contenders, and we're going to end part 2 with SummerSlam. Following SummerSlam, we're going to get to our usual format of 1 episode of Raw per 1 episode of Wrestling Raw. So things will be very different starting after our next upcoming episode. So yeah, I think we're done with this one, guys. I want to thank everybody out there again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing here, want to connect with us, you can look us up on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter under the handle @WraslinRaw. That's @WRASSLINRAW, all one word. Also, don't forget to click subscribe on that to get every episode of Rasslin' Raw popping up in your podcast feed. Yeah, next time on Rasslin' Raw, we're going to be doing part 2 of 1994 Raw so far. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Rasslin' Raw.